Huh? So he's a general, huh? Okay, cool. Where did he do his service? He didn't. Wait. How does one become a general if you don't... Huh? Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Bye. March 11th, 1951. You have been directed by the president of your country to keep your mouth shut about national policy, or at least clear anything you want to say about it with the president. Well, that's easy enough to do, right? But not if you're Douglas MacArthur, because if you're him, you choose to ignore the directive. I'm Indy Neidell, and this is the Korean War. Last week, Operation Killer came to an end, but did not achieve its goals, so U.S. 8th Army Commander Matt Ridgway made plans for a new operation codenamed Ripper to continue the advance. And as there is seemingly every week, there were tensions between U.S. President Harry Truman and UN Forces Commander Douglas MacArthur. This week on the 5th, Ridgway orders Operation Ripper to begin on the 7th. I said last week that he didn't want to announce a kickoff date until he had a minimum of 5 days supply of everything, ammunition, food, gas, at all forward levels. He does not actually have that on the 5th, not the gasoline. It takes 2 more days to get enough fuel up to the front on the overtaxed railway system. U.S. 9th and 10th Corps have by then moved up to the Arizona line, and there are no clear or convincing signs of any impending enemy offensive. Also, the railways may be overtaxed, but they are in way better shape than what the communist forces have to use. Beginning back in January is an ongoing campaign by the UN Air Forces to hit the enemy railway network, since its troop and supply capacity is greater than that of the roads, with special emphasis on destroying railway bridges. As the attacks continued, a principal point in the selection of targets remained that dropping the railroad bridges and keeping them unserviceable would leave the Chinese and North Koreans with no usable stretch of rail line more than 30 miles long. And just what is the general plan for Operation Ripper? The UN forces are to advance from the Arizona line to what they call the Idaho line, which actually traces a pretty deep salient into the enemy positions in the center of the peninsula. It goes from the Han River, like 13 or so kilometers east of Seoul, and then northeast almost to the 38th parallel, and then a little more gently southeasterly to the east coast, some 10 kilometers north of Gangneung. Choncheon and Hongcheon are the main prizes, both being road hubs. 9th Corps is tasked with taking these two and penetrating deepest into the salient. Should there be an opportunity for airborne tactics, they will be joined by the 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team. 9th Corps, by the way, is now under William Hogue. Ned Almond's 10th Corps is to his right, and they're supposed to advance like 35 kilometers. The area to the east of them is divided between the ROK, South Korean, 3rd and 1st Corps. Now, because last week, the ROK Capital Division lost a bunch of men in an ambush, Ridgway has had ROK 3rd Division detached from 10th Corps and attached to ROK 3rd Corps. But ROK 5th Division, badly mauled last month, has rejoined 10th Corps. The South Korean forces are to secure Route 20. This is going to be fairly easy to do in some places, since they're already above it. In fact, ROK 1st Corps at the coast is already at and above the Idaho line. 3rd Corps further inland has a bit more work to do, moving through Tayback Mountain ridges. At the very west, in U.S. 1st Corps sector, U.S. 3rd and ROK 1st Divisions are to hang out and protect U.S. 25th Division's flank and protect Incheon, where hundreds of tons of supplies arrive daily. 25th Division is to attack across the Han, where it reaches the Pukan River, clearing the high ground and protecting 9th Corps' flank. There are 3 phase lines on the way to Idaho: Albany, Buffalo, and Cairo. 9th Corps should take Hongcheon advancing to Buffalo, and the approaches to Choncheon advancing to Cairo, with Choncheon the objective on the final drive to Idaho. Ridgway has been very protective of the plans and has restricted access to them. And on March 6th, he briefs newsmen about the Ripper plan, but tells them not to say anything about it for 48 hours. And remember, Ridgway wants to discourage MacArthur's usual public visits to Korea at the start of an offensive to prevent the enemy getting wise to impending operations. So he writes Mac and urges him to delay coming to Korea until after the operation has begun. MacArthur does not do this, but does arrive at Suwon late in the morning of the 7th after the assaults have already begun to avoid telegraphing anything. When he does his usual press conference, though, he has this to say. Assuming no diminution of the enemy's flow of ground forces and material to the Korean battle area, a continuation of the existing limitation upon our freedom of counteroffensive action, and no major additions to our organizational strength, the battle lines cannot fail in time to reach a point of theoretical stalemate. This becomes known as MacArthur's die for tie statement. He is now publicly saying he can't win full victory with what he has at hand. Deliberations toward an important decision were currently underway, but not in the direction of MacArthur's viewpoint. No one in Washington disputed MacArthur's prediction that a stalemate could develop out of the conditions obtaining, but a military victory, because of the commitments and risks an attempt to achieve it would entail, was no longer considered a practical objective. What they're thinking instead, which is more in line with their hopes of avoiding another world war, is seeking a ceasefire and negotiating a settlement. The State and Defense Departments are hard at work studying the possibilities, as I said last week, although the actual goals are still undecided. They do think attempts to achieve them can be made after they drive the enemy back across the 38th parallel. But back to what the press calls MacArthur's die for a tie talk. MacArthur has been taking shots ever more at the U.S. administration. What began now was, if not a deliberate campaign to force the president to fire him, then surely the next closest thing. If he could not have his way in Korea, he was going to do all he could to bring down those who stood in his way. So he has been repeatedly violating the December directive that he clear anything he has to say about U.S. national policy with President Harry Truman before releasing it. He's even referred to the directive as a joke, and also that since he's an old man of 71, he has nothing to lose by ignoring it. In this press conference on the 7th, he begins by jabbing at Truman about the abnormal restraints placed on his command, and the disgraceful lack of additional men and equipment being given him. He's even critical of Ridgway's recent success, calling all the territorial gains made an accordion war, meaning that they might take some ground, but they'll give it up when the Chinese attack again. If no one in Washington thought such a war was ideal, they were convinced it was punishing the Chinese infinitely more than their own forces, perhaps on a casualty ratio of 10 or 15 to 1, and the alternatives were much worse. Yet it was an insulting phrase, and Ridgway smoldered when he heard it. Here was his superior speaking so condescendingly about what he, and perhaps more important, the men fighting under him, had seen as a considerable success. It was an assault on their morale, if nothing else, from someone who was supposed to be on their side. MacArthur also says the Chinese are building up for a new and massive offensive. Is this the case? Well, kind of, yeah. Ridgway's intelligence chief, Jim Tarkington, thinks the Chinese are gearing up to launch an offensive within a few days from now, perhaps out of the Hongchon region. He is mistaken about that. The evidence of an enemy buildup collected by the Army intelligence staff was nonetheless valid. At the same time, it was incomplete and off the mark as to the identification and location of units. Oh yes, the recent report of 7 new Chinese armies in the peninsula was in large part actually the return of 3 North Korean corps, 9 North Korean divisions, who had gone to Manchuria last fall for training and refitting. KPA 6 Corps, KPA is North Koreans, with the 18th, 19th, and 36th divisions crossed the Yalu River into Korea in January and are by now northwest of Seoul. Now, 8th Army Intel did catch their southern movements by March 1st, but still has no idea about KPA 7th and 8th Corps. 7th Corps, with 13th, 32nd, and 37th divisions, crossed in January and have been near Wonsan for nearly 2 weeks now, and 8th Corps, with 42nd, 45th, and 46th divisions, crossed in February and is now near Hungnam, except for 45th Division, who have joined 3rd Corps just above the parallel. With the units that were already in those areas, the KPA now has as reserves in the Hungnam-Wonsan area 2 corps, with 8 divisions and a brigade. Ridgway is only aware of the 2 divisions and the brigade that have been there for a while. Ridgway is also unaware of KPA 4th Corps, who moved west from northeastern Korea in December and now defend a section of the Yellow Sea coast. Total North Korean reserves right now are 4 corps in 14 divisions and 3 brigades. Together with those units at the front, this is an organization of 8 corps in 27 divisions and 4 brigades. Okay, it is not as strong as those numbers might indicate. The majority of these divisions are under strength, and a few not really even battle-worthy. But the KPA has recovered remarkably since September and October, and Nam Il is now Army Chief of Staff. He was actually born in 1913 as Yakov Petrovich Nam in what was then the Russian Empire. In 1937, he and the other ethnic Koreans in the Soviet Far East, well over 150,000 of them, were deported to Uzbekistan. Since Japan controlled the Korean peninsula, they were suspected of pro-Japanese espionage and were thus enemies of the state. Funny thing though, it is not exactly clear if Nam escaped the deportations or not. Chinese and American sources say he graduated from university at Tashkent in 1939, but declassified Soviet ones say he graduated that year at Tomsk in Siberia. Sources agree that he studied to be a teacher, but sources disagree about what he did during World War II. Even in Encyclopedia, it says he served in the Red Army, but those declassified Soviet documents say he taught in Uzbekistan from 1941 to 1943, and then was deputy chief and then chief of the local Department of Public Education from 1943 to 1946. After that, he was sent to Communist Korea by the Soviets and was quite successful, first holding offices in the Department of Education, and then last year became a member of North Korea's Communist Party's Central Committee, and then worked in the Ministry of Defense. So it would seem he has become a general and now chief of staff without any formal military training. His headquarters are in Pyongyang, and tactical front headquarters are like 50 kilometers north of Chuncheon. Command there is no longer under Kim Chaek, who died January 31st either from a heart attack, an airstrike, or assassination because of his failure to defend Incheon, depending whom you believe, and is now under Kim Ung, who everyone agrees actually did serve in the Chinese 8th Route Army during World War II and was commander of KPA 1st Corps during the initial invasion of South Korea. As for the Chinese, there are, in fact, a lot of new Chinese troops in Korea. In the second half of February, the PVA, Chinese, 19th Army Group, that's the 63rd, 64th, and 65th Armies, crossed in Korea at Sinuju and is now northwest of Seoul between the Yesong and Imjin rivers. The 9th Army Group, badly mauled at Chosin Reservoir, is now mostly refurbished. Ridgway's gang is only aware of one of that group's armies, the 26th, and not at all aware of the 19th Army Group. Okay, 8th Army staff has gotten a few reports about them, but they don't believe them. Various Chinese armies have also been relieving many of the ones near the front the past few weeks, so the troops are generally pretty fresh. Now in March, 47th Army, 56th Artillery Division, and the 3rd Army Group with the 12th, 15th, and 60th Armies are all in the process of setting up shop in Korea. When this is all finished later this month, Chinese strength in Korea will be 4 army groups of 14 armies and 42 divisions, with 4 artillery divisions and 2 separate artillery regiments. This buildup is indeed very much in preparation for an offensive, but that offensive will not originate in the Hongcheon area, nor is it imminent. In the meantime, the Chinese and North Koreans will continue their elastic mobile defense of giving ground but employing delaying tactics. So what happens when Operation Ripper begins? Well, it seems, in some places it really seems, like they might reach the Idaho line by default. The enemy is only using delaying actions, and these mostly by small forces, even though it is pretty tough resistance, especially with localized counterattacks. U.S. 25th Division crosses the Han before dawn the morning of the 7th, reaching the northern shore nearly unopposed. Tanks are ferried across, and air support comes in, and they push through defenses of mortar fire and anti-tank and anti-personnel mines and gain like 3 kilometers that day. The rest of the week, they advance about the same pace, and after the 10th, there's not much resistance at all. So today, the 35th Infantry reaches the Albany line, clearing a zone on the east side of the Pukan River. 9th Corps advances 4 divisions abreast. To the left, in a wider zone, 24th Division, and to the right, U.S. 1st Cavalry, ROK 6th, and U.S. 1st Marine advance on Hongchon. They face light to medium resistance, but advance steadily, and are closing on the Albany line by the week's end. As for 10th Corps to their right, U.S. 2nd, ROK 5th, and U.S. 7th Divisions advance, with the 7th Division moving up Route 20 on the right. They have a bit more trouble, with the North Koreans keeping gains minimal until today, the 11th, when the KPA begin withdrawing above the Albany line. Further east toward the coast, the ROK forces are already above the Idaho line, as I said, so they mostly consolidate positions for the time being. And that is the week, with Operation Ripper getting going against not a whole lot of opposition, the Chinese and North Koreans building up for an offensive of their own, and MacArthur opening his mouth. He said straight out, they can't win with the force they have, can only reach stalemate. But what do the Chinese think? I mean, what do they want? They are preparing an offensive, a big one, but they're ceding an awful lot of ground. Will they withdraw beyond the 38th parallel, where the war began, before they stop and fight? And what is a good end to the war to them? I think Peng Dehuai maybe has convinced Mao Zedong that they are not able to drive the UN forces off the Korean peninsula. So does that mean they'll accept a stalemate? Well, I don't know. I really don't know. And they're not saying. They are committed to this war, and Mao's not going to do anything where he loses face. But if he is playing only to win, and MacArthur is playing only to win, and neither side is capable of winning, then something has to give, and likely soon. Something else happens today, March 11th, 1951. In New York, Norman Neidell turns 12 years old. You may find that last name familiar. Well, breaking the timeline, that is because he is my father. Or rather, he was my father. He passed away 3 weeks ago, a bit short of what would have been his 86th birthday today. I thought this would give me an opportunity to say thank you to him, because without him encouraging my interest in history or my enthusiasm for seeing the world, then this channel, well, Time Ghost wouldn't exist. Certainly not in the form that it does. So thanks, Dad. I love you. I'm gonna miss you.